So we got my 911 in here, still working on it. Of course, going to be working on it for the rest of my life. I started getting some more of the tubes done on the inside, on the tube chassis, but it's kind of time to start moving out in both directions, front and rear. And the best way to start, I think, is to just start cutting. Look, you can see my Z. Ooh. You can see my Z creeping in the background. That's got some stuff going on with it as well, which we will be covering when we get there. But right now, the idea is to just get rid of the bulk of this garbage. Now, it's not garbage, but it's garbage to me. This is a big frame rail, nice and heavy. Down here is the torsion bar tube that was there. There's still the big chunk on the frame. I think there's gonna be a lot of weight here. We also got this big chunky rear tow hook and rear crash bar support area. And then on the front, we got all the fender support and front frame rails, and that's gonna go as well. And I don't really know where to start, so I'm just gonna start here. So now I got both frame rails cut all the way out along with the entire rear whatever section. Both frame rails all the way forward. We got a nice big pile of metal here. Also got these the heater ducts there. These guys right here are really heavy. Let's see. That's like... Took all I had to do one-handed, and then I can barely curl the center section. So good amount of weight taken off the back, which is good. And then me, Grant, and Corey propped up the PDK into the back of the car. It's a heavy bitch. I don't know how much it weighs, but we'll find out eventually. We'll weigh it. Also, if you've noticed, there's some damage here. That's how I got the trans. I'm gonna fix it. I got the parts right here. I'll get to that. Once I get the adapter plate, I can bolt the adapter plate up to the trans and then, you know, just weld the pieces in place. They're not going to be super structural because it's fairly thin cast. But actually, now that I think about it, I could fill these slots like these with some sort of epoxy. And that'll really secure that whole corner really well, actually. So I'll probably do that. I got it in place, and then I got the 996 subframe half thing in place, and you see a bit of a sneak peek of what's going on here. So that is about, give or take, where the wheel's going to sit forward and back as far as wheelbase goes. I don't know, I mean, I'm going to get it like way up there, but this is just to fit the kind of fit the wheelbase and see. So the way I figured this out is I took the transmission, and then I got the length of the engine front to back plus 35 millimeters for the DomiWorks adapter plate. And I'm measuring from the transmission to the back. And if I line the engine approximately up with the back of the car, give or take a little bit, that will give me the best weight distribution for a rear engine car that I can get, because we're moving the wheel back. So now the wheel was previously here. Let's just say, yeah, that's about centered, I'd say. That mark right there might be centered, actually. So that was there, which lines up with that. So that means this sheet metal was in front and this sheet metal was behind the axle center line. So now we added all of this sheet metal, including all the framework and all the cage that there is. All of that is going to be in front of the axle center line, which is going to somewhat help redistribute the weight balance a little bit. We're also going to have the turbo and intercooler is going to be in front of the wheel. So I don't know how much it actually affects it, but any weight that is in front of the axle center line, I assume, I'm under the impression that if it's here, for instance, it affects, you know, rear and barely of the front weight distribution. But if it's here, it affects front and rear weight distribution, like evenly, yes, words. Sorry, it's late, I don't know words. So that makes it so all of this stuff, including the driver, all of that affects the front and rear differently if I move the rear wheel back. So for instance, if I moved the rear wheel back to here, which I wouldn't do, then all of the body work would affect the, like, it would be evenly, it would be in between the axle center lines. And then that, you know, where I sit would be about in the middle rather than kind of rear oriented. So that's kind of the goal with this. I'm also going to have this wheel sitting like way up there, really high. So the car's going to sit very low. As you can see, the chassis is off of the table, but the wheel itself is well below the table. It's about 6 inches right there, so I'm going to raise this subframe 6 inches, give or take, and that'll make it so all my suspension geometry, like that, is flat at ride height. And then I'm also going to raise the transmission about the same, give or take. Yeah, it looks like the axle is a little bit lower than the transmission right now. So that means the transmission might go up 5 inches and subframe and all that'll go up 6 inches, something like that. And then we got a ton of progress on this rear tube chassis area. We started off with these rear frame rails out of tube. These are 1.75" by 0.95 DOM. Oh, next we did these braces right there, which are bracing from our drive shaft tunnel to the frame rail. Did one of those on each side symmetrically. Then we cut out the the old rear brace bar for the main hoop, and we brought it all the way back here. So that'll brace this whole area really nicely. Then we did a tube from there to there just to really triangulate this section here. This is pretty much going to be the strongest section back here, and that's where this is going to come attached to as well. So I've been calculating where and what direction all the forces are going to be, and that's kind of how I'm deciding where all the tubes are going to be placed, because I don't want to place too many tubes and don't want to place too little, of course. And then this brace right here is going to brace the area where the suspension mounts up to. So that's really important. And then also roughly here-ish, I believe, that is where the motor plates are going to bolt to. So still waiting for the brackets to get here from Send Cut Send, but I got brackets for that, got brackets for the subframe, got brackets for a bunch of stuff coming from them. They handle all my high precision stuff way better than what I could do with my CNC plasma table over there. And I just like the cut quality of them. So that's why I use their service rather than my own stuff. Also built this semi-solid transmission mount. Turned down a piece of Delrin on my lathe, and then threw that in the freezer, and then slipped in these bushings, which are like the poly bushings like I run on my Viper swap motor mounts and Corey's Ferrari swap motor mounts, actually. But a lot of good progress here. This is nearly all, I wouldn't say completed, structurally in place, I'd say. You know, we got everything here that's going to be here, aside from some gusseting and whatnot. And I'm going to do one bar from here to there, and that'll provide a lot of just left-right support that the motor plates aren't going to provide, because I'm going to use the motor plates as sort of a structural, they're going to be a sort of a structural cross member, because they're going to brace the frame rails together. So they're going to be holding the frame rails in place left to right, along with holding the engine in place from twisting around and doing all of its jazz. A lot going on. It's a big thing, a lot of stuff, a lot of math going on. I'm not mathing very hard, honestly, but yeah, I'm happy with what it's looking like. It's got a really aggressive look, and also with all of this tubing in place, all of the front stuff still in place, me and Grant were able to pick up the whole car with just us two. I could kind of pick it up by myself, but it's really just awkward more than anything. So that was the only issue with me doing it by myself. Yeah, so it's pretty light. So got that going for me. And one final thing I got for you before we go. I cut the front end off, lobbed it off right there, and we're gonna start on the front end. And also, final update, I pulled off one of the knuckles because I am going to convert it from McPherson strut to a double wishbone. I'm going to use factory knuckle geometry and then factory lower control arm. Basically, build a custom knuckle, build a custom upper control arm, and then mount it to the tube, which is going to be right here. And I think it'll just kind of give us better control over all the suspension geometry. And then also, I had a bit of a problem with how much height there was going to be from the strut. Even if I, went to a coilover, like that's meant for lowering the vehicle, I think it still would have just sat way too high. This isn't where it sits. This thing goes down into there, something, I don't know. But I still think it would have been way too high for the amount of vertical room I had between, the top of the fender or the top of the hood and where this is going to be mounted for good geometry and everything. And I could do cantilever fronts, which would be sick. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We're still busting ass on this, and I'm about to start busting ass on the Viper Swap Z.